The sharp, metallic scrape of the supply cage door echoed through the Camp Pendleton warehouse at 0530 hours, followed immediately by Major Clifton Briggs's booming laugh, the kind that demanded audience participation. Jordan Hayes didn't look up from her inventory tablet. She'd been organizing ammunition crates for the past 90 minutes, her movements efficient and precise. At 5'5" and 132 pounds, she barely made a sound as she moved between the rows of military supplies. Her dark brown hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her gray-green eyes remained focused on the screen in her hands. The warehouse smelled like gun oil and cardboard. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting harsh shadows across pallets of equipment waiting for the morning's distribution. 15 junior Marines were scattered throughout the space, conducting their own equipment checks, their voices low and professional in the pre-dawn quiet. Then Briggs walked in. 6'1", 205 pounds of perfectly pressed uniform and polished boots. His blonde buzz cut caught the overhead lights as he strode through the main aisle, Lieutenant Owen Fletcher and Staff Sergeant Troy Vance flanking him like loyal hounds. All three were fresh from morning PT, still wearing running gear, faces flushed from exertion. Briggs's boot connected with Jordan's clipboard. The metallic clatter rang out like a gunshot. Papers scattered across the concrete floor, inventory sheets sliding under equipment racks. Jordan stopped, looked at the mess, knelt slowly to gather the papers. "Careful there, sweetheart," Briggs' voice carried across the warehouse, deliberately loud. "These are military supplies, requires actual training to inventory." Jordan's hands moved steadily, collecting sheets one by one. She said nothing. Fletcher stepped closer, his red hair bright under the fluorescence. At 26 years old, he'd never deployed, but he wore his lieutenant bars like they proved something. "Does she even know what an M4 is? Probably thinks it's a highway exit." Laughter rippled through the nearby Marines. Not all of them, some looked uncomfortable, but enough. Enough to encourage Briggs. Jordan stood, papers now neatly stacked. She clipped them back to her board and returned to scanning barcodes. Her movements remained calm, controlled, undisturbed. Vance, 29 years old with 3 deployments under his belt, leaned against a supply rack. His dark skin gleamed with sweat, his shaved head reflecting the overhead lights. Maybe she thinks inventory means counting mop buckets. More laughter. Phones appeared in hands, recording now. The modern instinct, if something's happening, film it. The crowd grew. 20 Marines now, 25. Briggs crossed to the weapons rack mounted on the far wall. His hand closed around an M4A1 carbine, unloaded, secured for display and training purposes. He lifted it with exaggerated care, turning to face Jordan. "Pop quiz, warehouse girl." His blue eyes glinted with something ugly. "What's this called?" Jordan continued scanning. Beep. Next crate. Beep. Next. Next item. "Hey, I'm talking to you." She didn't respond. Her tablet screen reflected in her gray-green eyes as she worked. Fletcher moved closer, his voice pitched to Carrie. "I don't think she understands English. Should we try Spanish? Maybe that's why she's doing manual labor." The racist edge to his comment made several Marines shift uncomfortably, but no one spoke up. Briggs set the rifle down with a sharp clack. "This is why civilians don't belong on base. They don't understand respect, don't understand the uniform." He stepped directly into Jordan's path. "When an officer addresses you, you respond. That's basic courtesy." Jordan finally looked up. Her face remained neutral, professional. "I'm sorry, sir. I'm trying to complete this inventory before the morning distribution window. Was there something you needed?" Her voice was quiet, controlled, the kind of control that takes practice. "What I need," Briggs said, his face inches from hers now, "is for contractors to remember their place. You're not military, you're hired help. So when I'm standing here, you put down your little tablet and pay attention." 35 Marines watched now. All phones were out. Jordan held his gaze for exactly 2 seconds. Then she set her tablet down carefully on the nearest crate, clasped her hands in front of her, and waited. "That's better," Briggs smiled, predatory. "See, she can learn." In the back of the warehouse, Master Gunnery Sergeant Raymond Kovac entered through the rear access door. 47 years old, 26 years of service, weathered face mapped with experience. He'd come for a requisition form, but he stopped when he saw the crowd. His brown eyes tracked the scene, analyzed it with decades of practice. He watched Jordan's posture, feet shoulder-width apart, weight distributed 60-40, rear legs subtly loaded, hands clasped but thumbs aligned, not relaxed civilian posture, combat neutral. He watched her breathing, steady, too steady for someone being harassed by a field-grade officer. 4-second rhythm, box breathing, in, hold, out, hold. He watched her eyes, flat, emotional, professional, the look of someone who'd stood in worse situations and survived them. Kovac's jaw tightened. He'd seen that look before, just not on civilians. Fletcher picked up the thread of mockery. "Bet she couldn't tell an M4 from an M16 if her life depended on it. Probably thinks they're both just scary black rifles." Vance laughed, but it sounded forced now. Even he was starting to sense something off about the way Jordan stood there, silent and still a stone. Briggs circled her slowly. "What's your name anyway? Your real name, not whatever's on the contractor badge." "Jordan Hayes." Her voice remained level. "Jordan. That's a boy's name, isn't it?" Briggs grinned at his own joke. "Your parents wanted a son?" She didn't react, didn't blink, just stood there, hands clasped, breathing steady. "What, no comeback? No tears?" Fletcher pushed. "I thought all you civilians are sensitive types." The crowd had grown to 40 now. Some Marines looked ashamed, but said nothing. Others filmed eagerly, already thinking about social media posts. Kovac stepped forward, his voice cutting through the noise. "Major Briggs." Briggs turned, irritation flashing across his features. "Master Guns. Can I help you?" "Just need a requisition form, sir, but I can come back." "No need. We're just having a conversation with our contractor here." Briggs gestured dismissively, teaching her about military protocol. Kovac's eyes met Jordan's. For 2.3 seconds, something passed between them. Recognition. Not of identity, but of type. She looked away first, but not from submission. From control. "Sir," Kovac said carefully, "respectfully, morning distribution starts in 25 minutes. Miss Hayes probably needs to finish her work." Briggs' face hardened. "When I want your opinion on how to manage civilians, Master Guns, I'll ask for it." Kovac nodded slowly, said nothing more. But he didn't leave. Briggs turned back to Jordan, frustration mounting now. He'd expected tears or anger or something he could mock further. Instead, she just stood there, unbreakable and silent. "Get back to work," he finally snapped. "And next time an officer speaks to you, show some respect." Jordan picked up her tablet without a word and returned to scanning. Briggs strode toward the exit, Fletcher and Vance following. As they passed Kovac, the Master Gunnery Sergeant heard Briggs mutter, "Contractors, waste of taxpayer money." The crowd dispersed slowly, Marines returning to their tasks, phones disappearing into pockets. The show was over. Except Kovac remained. He approached the requisition desk where Jordan now worked, entering data with steady hands. "Miss Hayes." She looked up. "Yes, Master Gunnery Sergeant." "You handled that well." "Thank you." "Too well." His eyes narrowed slightly. "That wasn't your first time being harassed by someone in authority." Jordan's expression didn't change. "I've worked customer service before." "That's not what I meant." Kovac studied her face, the small scar above her left eyebrow, the controlled set of her jaw. Your stance, your breathing, the way you held position under pressure, that's not customer service training. I should finish this inventory. Yeah, you should. Kovac didn't move. But eventually, someone's going to push harder than words. And when that happens, whatever you're hiding is going to come out. Jordan met his eyes fully then. For just a moment, her professional mask slipped. He saw something underneath, something hard and tested and dangerous. Then it was gone. Have a good morning, Master Guns. Kovac took his requisition form and left. But as he walked across the compound toward his office, he pulled out his phone and scrolled to a contact he hadn't called in months. The warehouse returned to normal operations. Marines collected their gear. Distribution began on schedule. Jordan Hayes continued her work, silent and efficient, as if nothing had happened. But in the storage room behind the main cage, where no one could see, her hands trembled for exactly 5 seconds before she forced them still. Gunnery Sergeant Kovac requisitioned his supplies without further comment, but his eyes never left Jordan Hayes. In his 26 years of service, he'd seen that expression exactly 4 times, all on operators who'd seen things that ended careers. The morning distribution window closed at 07:30. Jordan completed her inventory with mechanical precision, each movement economical and purposeful. She was logging final counts when the warehouse door opened again. Captain Lee entered first, artillery officer, 32 years old, broad-shouldered and confident. Behind him came First Lieutenant Morrison from logistics, clipboard in hand, looking irritated before he'd even spoken. "This the contractor who screwed up last week's inventory?" Morrison's voice carried across the warehouse floor. Jordan looked up from her tablet. "That was a digital system failure, sir. I filed the incident report with IT services on the 19th. Briggs, who'd returned for forgotten gear, perked up at the sound of confrontation. "Oh, she speaks, and she knows big words like incident report." Fletcher, still lingering near the weapons racks, grinned. "Probably Googled it." Jordan returned her attention to the tablet screen. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Somewhere in the building, a radio crackled with morning traffic reports. "Look at me when I'm talking to you." Morrison stepped closer, his boots heavy on concrete. She raised her eyes, waited. "The system didn't fail," Morrison continued. "Someone entered incorrect data. That someone was you. The error log shows a server-side validation failure at 13:47 hours. My entries were timestamped before that. The incident report includes screenshots." Jordan's voice remained flat, factual. Vance pushed off from the supply rack where he'd been leaning. "You talk back to officers often, contractor?" "I'm clarifying facts, not talking back." "Sounds like talking back to me." Vance's jaw tightened. He was 29, but sometimes acted younger, desperate to fit in with the senior officers. Briggs moved to the weapons rack, selecting an M4 magazine from the storage bin. Without warning, without looking, he tossed it toward Jordan. Her hand snapped up, caught it. Perfect grip. Thumb automatically checking the feed lips, weight assessment instantaneous. The movement was faster than thought, pure muscle memory. The warehouse went quiet. Jordan froze, realizing her mistake. She'd moved like someone who'd handled magazines 10,000 times, like someone trained. "Lucky catch," Briggs said, but his eyes narrowed with suspicion. Kovac, watching from near the requisition desk, felt his pulse quicken. That wasn't luck. That was hundreds of hours of weapons handling drilled into reflexive response. Jordan set the magazine down carefully on the nearest crate. "May I continue my work?" "No." Briggs picked up an M27 infantry automatic rifle from the display rack. He handled it carelessly, finger drifting near the trigger during inspection, muzzle sweeping across the room. Jordan's eyes tracked the barrel. Her jaw clenched almost imperceptibly. Briggs, he ejected the magazine, checked the chamber, all correct procedures, but performed with theatrical slowness. Then he let his finger rest on the trigger guard while gesturing with the weapon. Finger off the trigger until ready to fire. The words left Jordan's mouth before she could stop them. That's an open bolt system with a... She caught herself, shut down mid-sentence. Dead silence. Fletcher's eyes went wide. How the hell does a warehouse contractor know open bolt systems? Jordan's breathing remained steady. 4 count in, 4 count hold, 4 count out, 4 count hold. I read the technical manual. It's in the supply database for reference. You read the TM for the M27? Briggs' voice dripped skepticism. For fun. I like to understand the equipment I'm managing. Right. Briggs set the rifle down with deliberate care. And I'm sure you read the field manual for every piece of gear in this warehouse? Most of them, yes, sir. Morrison laughed, sharp and ugly. This is insane. She's lying. From the back of the warehouse, Corporal Jamie Donnelly had been watching the entire exchange. 21 years old, fresh-faced and idealistic, he joined the Marines to serve with honor. What he was witnessing didn't feel honorable. "Sir," Donnelly said, his voice uncertain, "maybe we should—" "Should what, Corporal?" Briggs turned on him. "Let civilians lecture us about weapon systems?" Donnelly's courage evaporated. He looked at the floor. "Nothing, sir." But he didn't walk away. Instead, he repositioned himself where he could observe Jordan more clearly. Something about her didn't fit. The way she stood, the way she'd caught that magazine, the clinical precision of her movements. He watched her breathing, counted the rhythm. 4 seconds in, 4 hold, 4 out, 4 hold. Perfect box breathing. They'd taught him that technique at School of Infantry for stress management, but it had taken him weeks to master it. She did it like it was automatic. Briggs grabbed a heavy equipment box from the top shelf, 40 pounds of training gear. He carried it toward Jordan, then accidentally let it slip from his grip. The box fell toward her feet. She sidestepped. Not a jump, not a scramble. A tactical displacement. Exactly the right distance, weight already shifting to her back leg, hands coming up to guard position before she caught herself and forced them back down. Kovac saw it. Donnelly saw it. Even Vance noticed something wrong with the movement. "You're awful jumpy for a warehouse worker." Briggs' voice had an edge now, fear hiding under aggression. He'd sensed it too, something off about this woman. "Just trying to avoid injury, sir." Jordan bent to help move the box aside. "Sir," Vance latched onto the word. "You don't call civilians sir, unless—" "Unless what?" Jordan straightened, meeting his eyes. "Unless you've been military." Vance crossed his arms. "Have you?" "I'm a contractor." "That's not an answer." "It's the answer I'm giving." The tension in the room thickened. 6 Marines had stopped working entirely, watching the confrontation unfold. Morrison pulled. Fletcher's stepped phone, filming now, invading her space. "You're hiding something. I can feel it." Jordan held her ground. Didn't retreat, didn't advance, just stood there, centered and balanced. "Everyone's hiding something, Lieutenant. That's what privacy means." "Not on a military base." Fletcher's face was inches from hers now. "On a base, secrets are security risks." Kovac had seen enough. He moved forward, his weathered face stern. "Major Briggs, respectfully, I'd ease up." Briggs rounded on him. "Why?" "Just trust me on this one, sir." "Trust you? Why should I trust you, Master Guns? You got some special insight I don't have?" Kovac chose his words carefully. "I've been doing this job for 26 years. I've seen a lot of people. And I'm telling you, sir, you're making a mistake. The only mistake is letting contractors work unsupervised." Briggs turned back to Jordan. "You want to prove you belong here? Fine. Prove it." Jordan said nothing. "Prove you're not just some civilian pretending to understand military equipment. Prove you actually know what you're talking about." "I don't have to prove anything, sir. My work speaks for itself. Your work, Briggs laughed. Your work is scanning barcodes. A trained monkey could do that. Something flickered in Jordan's eyes, just for a moment. Then it was gone. If we're finished here, I have cleaning duties in Building 7. We're not finished. Briggs blocked her path. Field strip and M4. 60 seconds. You claim you read the technical manual? Prove it. Jordan stood very still. That's not part of my job description. Consider it professional development. I decline. That wasn't a request. Briggs' voice went cold. You're on federal property, working under military contract. When I give you a lawful order relevant to your duties, you comply. Donnelly shifted uncomfortably. This felt wrong. Even if she was hiding something, this public humiliation seemed excessive. Kovac spoke again, quieter this time. Major, this could backfire. How? She's either competent or she's not. Either way, we'll know. Jordan looked at Kovac. The master gunnery sergeant gave the smallest nod. Do it. Get it over with. Whatever you're hiding, it's coming out anyway. Jordan's shoulders dropped slightly. Resignation. Fine, she said quietly. One demonstration. Then I go back to work. Agreed? Briggs smiled, thinking he'd won. Agreed. He handed her a standard M4A1 carbine from the rack, barrel pointed safely downward, magazine removed, chamber visibly clear. Jordan took the weapon. Her grip changed. Not dramatic, but noticeable. From uncertain civilian to practiced professional. Donnelly's eyes widened. He'd seen that exact grip in training videos. Thumb positioned for weapon retention, support hand indexed for immediate manipulation. 60 seconds, Briggs announced, pulling out his phone to time her. Starting now. Jordan set the rifle on the work table. Her hands moved. Not fast, efficient. No wasted motion. Each movement precise, automatic, inevitable. Charging handle removed. Bolt carrier group extracted. Buffer spring and buffer released. Lower receiver separated. Around the warehouse, Marines stopped pretending to work. Everyone watched. 23.4 seconds. The M4 lay in components perfectly organized on the table. Briggs' smile faltered. Reassemble it. Jordan's hands moved again. The same efficiency. The same unconscious competence. 26.1 seconds. The weapon was whole again. She pulled the charging handle, checked chamber, applied safety, and set it down. Total time, 49.5 seconds. Standard Marine qualification time, 2 minutes. Reconnaissance standard, 1 minute. She just crushed both. The warehouse was silent except for the hum of fluorescent lights and the distant sound of morning PT formations calling cadence. Briggs stared at the rifle, then at Jordan, then back at the rifle. Anyone can practice that, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Before we see what happens next, and trust me, what happens next will blow your mind, quick question. Have you ever been in a situation where you knew more than everyone assumed? Drop a comment, and if you're not subscribed yet, hit that button because this story gets absolutely insane. What happened next would be replayed on 63 smartphones, uploaded to 7 different social media platforms, and eventually require a formal statement from MARSOC Public Affairs. But in that moment, at 06:12 hours on a Tuesday morning, it started with 5 words from Major Clifton Briggs. Prove you're not a fake. Jordan Hayes stood motionless, her gray-green eyes fixed on the disassembled M4 she'd just reassembled in under 50 seconds. The warehouse felt smaller now, the air thick with tension and the smell of gun oil. Briggs grabbed an M27 infantry automatic rifle from the display rack, his movements sharp with frustration. This is a different system. Same challenge. Field strip it. Jordan's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Sir, I don't think. Fletcher cut her off. Thought so. She got lucky with the M4. Probably practiced that one at home. I haven't practiced anything at home. Then prove it. Briggs thrust the M27 toward her. 60 seconds. Go. Jordan took the weapon. Her hands paused for exactly 2 seconds, familiarizing herself with the different ergonomics, the gas piston system instead of direct impingement. Then she began. Her movements were clinical, precise. The magazine release, the bolt lock, the disassembly of components that functioned fundamentally differently from the M4 she just handled. 31.7 seconds. She reassembled it in 34.2 seconds. The silence in the warehouse was absolute. Morrison's phone camera captured everything. The digital zoom focused on Jordan's hands as they moved with impossible competence. The gas piston system creates different recoil impulse than direct impingement. Buffer spring tension is lighter. Bolt carrier weight compensates for the... She stopped, realized what she'd just done. She'd quoted technical specifications that weren't in civilian manuals. Details that required hands-on experience with both systems to understand. Kovac closed his eyes. She'd just quoted the MARSOC training manual, nearly word for word. Where did you learn that? Morrison lowered his phone slightly, his expression shifting from mockery to confusion. Jordan set the M27 down carefully. I read extensively. Bullshit. Vance's voice was flat. That's not reading, that's training. I'm self-educated on weapon systems. Briggs stepped forward, his 6'1" frame towering over her 5'5". Who are you? I'm Jordan Hayes, civilian contractor, logistics coordination. No. Briggs shook his head. No civilian handles weapons like that. No civilian knows that level of technical detail. Who the hell are you really? Jordan's breathing remained steady. 4 count in, 4 count hold, 4 count out, 4 count hold. I've told you who I am. You've told me a name and a job title. That's not the same thing. Briggs' face flushed red. He was 38 years old, had served 2 Iraq deployments, and had failed MARSOC selection 3 times. The woman standing in front of him had just demonstrated skills he'd never mastered. Range, right now. Kovac stepped forward. Major, this is getting out of hand. She's either a liar or she's hiding something. Either way, I want to know. Briggs pulled out his phone, already texting. You're so smart about weapons, let's see you actually shoot. I'd prefer not to, sir. I bet you would, because you can't. You memorized some procedures, got lucky with muscle memory. But actual marksmanship? That takes real training. Briggs smiled, ugly and triumphant. That takes military training. The warehouse door opened. 3 more Marines entered, drawn by text messages about the confrontation. Then 5 more. Word was spreading through morning formations. 45 Marines now. 60, all pulling out phones. Donnelly watched from the side, his young face troubled. This had stopped being about competence verification. This was public humiliation. But he was a corporal, and Briggs was a major, and the chain of command was absolute. Jordan looked at the growing crowd, at the phones, at Kovac, whose weathered face showed concern and something else. Warning, maybe, or recognition. Fine, she said quietly. 1 demonstration at the range. Then this ends. Oh, it'll end. Briggs was already walking toward the exit. When I prove you're all talk. The group moved across the base toward Range 5. The morning sun climbed higher, burning off the coastal fog. Marines in PT gear stopped their runs to watch the procession. More phones appeared. By the time they reached the range, 73 Marines had gathered. Officers, NCOs, junior enlisted. Even 2 families who'd been at the base gym. Staff Sergeant Hill, the range master, looked at the crowd with growing alarm. Sir, what's going on? Equipment verification, Briggs said. Set up 300 meters, 5 rounds, standing position, iron sights only. Hill's eyes widened. Sir, that's not standard. Standing qualification distance for standing. I don't care what's standard. Set it up. Hill looked at Jordan, standing small and quiet in her civilian clothes amid the sea of uniforms. Ma'am, you seem familiar with weapons handling procedures. I've been around firearms. She's been around manuals, Fletcher interjected. Big difference. Hill set up the firing position reluctantly. 300 meters downrange, digital targets waited. He handed Jordan an M4 with iron sights, no optics. Magazine is loaded with 5 rounds. Chamber is clear. You'll need to... I know the procedure. Jordan accepted the rifle, checked the chamber professionally, inspected the sights, tested the trigger pull. Hill noticed everything. The way she cleared the weapon, the way her support hand naturally found the correct position on the handguard, the way she checked the rear sight aperture for the correct range setting. Ma'am, where did you... Can we begin? Jordan's voice was tight now, stressed. The crowd was getting to her. Kovacs stood near the back, phone in hand. He wasn't filming, he was texting. A single message to a contact labeled Colonel Mercer, 1st Recon BN. The message read, "You need to see this. Range 5. Now, trust me." He hit send and put the phone away. Jordan stepped to the firing line. The morning wind picked up, pushing east at approximately 7 miles per hour. She noted it automatically, her eyes tracking the mirage in the distance, reading the atmospheric conditions. 73 Marines watched in silence. She assumed standing position. Weight forward, support elbow tucked tight, rifle mounted high in the shoulder pocket. Not the casual stance of a recreational shooter. The aggressive, stable platform of someone who'd fired thousands of rounds under pressure. Kovacs' breath caught. That was tactical standing, combat shooting, not target shooting. Jordan's breathing changed, deeper now, controlled. 4 seconds in through the nose, 4-second hold, 4 seconds out through the mouth, 4-second hold. Box breathing for physiological stress management. She fired. 5 rounds in 8.3 seconds. The digital screen updated. 5 hits, all center mass. 4.2-inch group. Marine Qualification Expert Standard, 6-inch group at closer range. Reconnaissance Standard, 5-inch group. She'd just exceeded both at a distance they weren't tested at. Nobody spoke. Hill stared at the target display, then at Jordan, then back at the display. That's not possible for standing at 300. Again, Briggs said, his voice shaking. Kneeling, faster. Jordan transitioned to kneeling. The movement was fluid, practiced. She fired 5 more rounds in 6.1 seconds. 3.8-inch group. Fletcher's face had gone pale. This isn't possible. Vance said nothing. He was 29 years old, had 3 deployments, considered himself a decent shot. Prone position, moving targets. Briggs was desperate now, his voice rising. He could feel control slipping away. Hill activated the moving. Oving target system, used only for advanced designated marksman training. 5 targets, random patterns, different speeds. Jordan dropped to prone. The transition was seamless, textbook perfect. Her body formed the proper Y shape, support elbow directly under the rifle, firing side leg cocked for recoil management. The targets began moving. She engaged. 5 shots, 5 hits. 11.4 seconds. Kovac turned to Donnelly, who stood nearby with his mouth open. Corporal, that's not Marine Corps training. What is it, Master Guns? That's Special Operations Forces. Jordan stood, handing the rifle back to Hill. Her hands were steady, but her face had gone slightly pale. The stress was affecting her, even if she didn't show it outwardly. Explain. Briggs grabbed her arm. Right now. Explain how you can shoot like that. Jordan pulled her arm free, the movement controlled but firm. I didn't say I was always a contractor, sir. What does that mean? It means exactly what it sounds like. Morrison picked up the range clipboard where Jordan had made notes while waiting. His eyes scanned her handwriting. These are wind calculations, advanced ballistics. This says correction for Coriolis effect? Hill looked over his shoulder. Only trained snipers calculate Coriolis at that distance. All eyes turned to Jordan. She stood silent, surrounded by Marines, phones recording from every angle. Her cover completely blown. The morning wind pushed harder. Somewhere in the distance, a drill instructor called cadence. The base continued its normal operations, unaware that in range 5, something impossible had just happened. Jordan's shirt had ridden up slightly during the prone shooting. Donnelly saw it first. Just the edge of something on her left shoulder blade. Dark ink. A tattoo. "Ma'am, your shoulder." Jordan pulled her shirt down immediately, but too late. Kovac had seen it. The distinct design of the MARSOC Raiders insignia. "That's a MARSOC tattoo," he said, loud enough for nearby Marines to hear. The crowd murmured. Phones zoomed in, trying to capture what they'd missed. Briggs stepped forward, reaching for her shirt. "Let me see." Jordan's hand intercepted his wrist. The hold was instant, controlled, a textbook joint manipulation that would cause compliance without injury if pressure increased. Pure combatives training. She released immediately. "Don't touch me, sir." The movement had been purely reflexive and completely revealing. Briggs rubbed his wrist, staring at her. "You just performed a joint lock." "I reacted to being grabbed." "That wasn't a reaction. That was training." His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "Who are you?" In the distance, a vehicle approached. A black SUV with 1st Reconnaissance Battalion markings. Colonel Patricia Mercer had arrived. Colonel Patricia Mercer had commanded 1st Reconnaissance Battalion for 14 months. She'd seen combat in Ramadi, trained hundreds of Marines, held top-secret compartmented clearance. But in her entire career, she'd never seen a crowd of Marines this silent, this tense, this confused. And she'd definitely never seen a civilian contractor holding a weapon like a MARSOC operator. She stepped out of the SUV, her 44 years evident in the gray streaks through her black hair, but her bearing unmistakably command. At 5'7" and 145 pounds, she wasn't physically imposing, but her presence commanded immediate attention. "Everybody put phones away, now." Her voice cut through the morning air like a blade. "This isn't social media content. This is a federal military installation, and I'm invoking operational security protocols. Anyone who posts footage from this morning will face non-judicial punishment for unauthorized recording on federal property." Phones disappeared into pockets. 73 Marines suddenly found their boots fascinating. Mercer walked to the firing line, where Hill stood holding the target display tablet. "Show me the results." Hill handed her the device wordlessly. She scrolled through the data, group sizes, shot timings, difficulty levels. Her dark brown eyes narrowed as she processed information that didn't make sense. "These are scores I'd expect from Force Recon's Marines, advanced designated marksmen." She looked up at Hill. "Who shot this?" "The contractor, ma'am." Hill gestured toward Jordan, who stood motionless near the firing line. "Ms. Jordan Hayes." Briggs stepped forward. "Ma'am, we have reason to believe she's misrepresented her background. She demonstrates knowledge and skills inconsistent with civilian employment. We were conducting verification when—" "You'll explain nothing until I ask, Major." Mercer's gaze could have cut steel. "Ms. Hayes, with me. Master Gunnery Sergeant Kovac, you as well. Major Briggs. Everyone else, dismissed." The crowd didn't move, too invested in the unfolding drama. That wasn't a suggestion. Dismissed means leave, now. Marines scattered like startled birds. Within 90 seconds, only 5 people remained. Mercer, Jordan, Kovac, Briggs, and Hill, who had authority as rangemaster. Mercer gestured toward the range office, a small concrete building adjacent to the firing line. Inside. The office was sparse. Metal desk, filing cabinets, a computer terminal with security login screen. Mercer closed the door behind them, the sound final as a cell lock. "Sit." She pointed Jordan to a chair. Jordan remained standing. "That wasn't a request, Ms. Hayes." Jordan sat. Her posture remained upright, controlled, hands folded in her lap. Mercer opened a folder she brought from the vehicle. "Your employment file lists you as logistics contractor, hired 3 weeks ago through Veterans Transition Program. Background check shows honorable discharge from unspecified service, but all details are redacted. She looked up. Why would a simple logistics contractor have classification restrictions on her background? I can't answer that, ma'am. Can't or won't? Both. Briggs moved forward aggressively. She's hiding something. She field-stripped an M27 in 30 seconds, shot expert marksman scores at distances we don't test at, and has what appears to be a MARSOC tattoo. She's either stolen valor or she's... Major Briggs, be quiet. Mercer didn't raise her voice. Didn't need to. Miss Hayes, you just shot scores that 90% of my Marines couldn't achieve. You demonstrated weapons knowledge that requires extensive training. Explain. Jordan's breathing remained measured, 4-count rhythm. I'm not authorized to discuss previous employment without proper clearance verification, ma'am. Previous employment? Mercer leaned forward. Government employment? I cannot confirm or deny without proper security protocols. The room fell silent, except for the hum of the air conditioning unit struggling against California heat. Kovacs spoke carefully. Colonel, request permission to speak freely? Go ahead, Master Guns. I think we need to run a different kind of background check, not civilian employment verification, military service verification through JPAS. Mercer studied Kovacs' weathered face, reading 26 years of experience in his expression. She nodded slowly and turned to the computer terminal, entering her credentials into the Joint Personnel Adjudication System. The screen loaded. She entered Jordan Hayes' information. Social Security number from the employment file, date of birth, last known service branch. The system processed for 5 seconds, then returned access restricted, special access program, compromised, contact MARSOC J2 personnel command. Mercer stared at the screen. What the hell? I have top secret SCI clearance. She tried again, using her battalion commander override codes. Same result. Special Access Program, compromised, contact MARSOC Personnel Command, Camp Lejeune. Briggs leaned over her shoulder. She hacked the system. She's a security risk who... Major, if you speak one more time without being addressed, I'll have you removed. Mercer pulled out her phone, scrolling to a contact list. She dialed. The conversation was brief, mostly one-sided from Mercer's end. Her expression shifted, through surprise, understanding, then something close to anger. She asked 3 questions, received 3 answers, and hung up. Long silence filled the office. Mercer looked at Briggs and Hill. Step outside, both of you. Ma'am, I have a right to, Briggs started. You have the right to follow orders, outside. Master Guns, you stay. Briggs and Hill exited. Through the window, they were visible pacing near the firing line, Briggs gesturing angrily. Mercer sat on the edge of the desk, studying Jordan with new eyes. I just spoke with Colonel Vickers at MARSOC Personnel Command. He told me enough, but I need to hear it from you. She paused. Who are you, really? Jordan stared at the floor. Her hands trembled slightly before she forced them still. Ma'am, I came here to stay invisible. That option ended the moment you field-stripped at M27 in front of 40 witnesses. Mercer's voice softened fractionally. You've got 70-plus Marines who just watched you outshoot their instructors. This is coming out whether you want it to or not. I need to know what I'm dealing with. Jordan was quiet. 15. 20. Then you need to bring them all back, she finally said, because I'll only say it once. Mercer held her gaze, reading the exhaustion and resignation there. She nodded. Master Guns, spread the word. Battalion formation at range 5 in 15 minutes. Anyone who wants answers, they'll get them. Officially. Kovac moved toward the door, then paused. Ma'am, permission to ask Miss Hayes a question first. Granted. Kovac turned to Jordan. The team photo you keep in your wallet, the one that fell out when you grabbed your ID 3 days ago in the warehouse. 14 people in full kit. That was your MSOT, wasn't it? Jordan's eyes snapped to his face. She'd thought no one had seen that photo when it slipped from her pocket during a supply requisition. She'd recovered it in under 2 seconds. But Kovac had seen, and he'd said nothing. Until now. Yes, Master Guns, that was my Marine Special Operations team. Was. Kovac's voice was gentle. They're gone. All of them, except me. The words hung in the air like smoke. Kovac came to attention and rendered a slow, formal salute. I'm sorry for your loss. Jordan stood reflexively, returning the salute with muscle memory that betrayed years of service. Then she caught herself, realizing what she'd just done, the formal military courtesy she'd tried so hard to avoid. Kovac left to gather the battalion. Mercer studied Jordan with a commander's assessment, tactical, strategic, and human all at once. When you tell them, keep it factual. Names, dates, service record. Nothing classified, nothing operational. Understood? Yes, ma'am. And Hayes? Mercer's voice dropped lower. Whatever happened to your team, whatever you're carrying, I need you to know something. You're not alone anymore. Not if you don't want to be. Jordan's professional mask cracked just slightly. Her gray-green eyes showed the weight she'd been carrying for 8 months. With respect, ma'am, being alone was the point. And how's that working out? Jordan almost smiled. Almost. Not well, apparently. Outside, Marines were forming up. The word had spread through the base like wildfire. Officers, NCOs, junior enlisted, civilian staff. Even the base chaplain had heard something significant was happening at Range 5. By the time 15 minutes elapsed, 217 people had assembled in loose formation on the range grounds. Briggs stood in the front row, his face a mixture of confusion and anger. Fletcher beside him looked uncertain now, the easy mockery gone. Vance had positioned himself slightly apart, as if distancing himself from what was coming. Donnelly stood near the back with other junior Marines, his young face showing the anticipation and nervousness of someone who sensed they were about to witness something important. Mercer emerged from the range office first, Jordan beside her. They walked to the center of the formation. Mercer called out commands with parade ground voice. Battalion, a tent hut! 217 Marines snapped to attention with synchronized precision. Jordan stood. At parade rest facing them, looking impossibly small in her civilian clothes amid the sea of uniforms. Her dark brown hair had come slightly loose from its bun during the shooting demonstration. The small scar above her left eyebrow caught the morning sunlight. Mercer's voice carried across the range. This is irregular, but circumstances require it. Ms. Hayes has agreed to clarify her background. You will remain silent until she finishes. Clear? Yes, ma'am. The response was uniformed, professional. Mercer nodded to Jordan. Whenever you're ready. Jordan took one breath, then another, box breathing to control her heart rate. She'd briefed mission plans to generals. She'd called in airstrikes under fire. But standing here, about to expose the identity she'd buried, felt harder than any of it. She began. At 0704 hours, 217 Marines stood at attention on Range 5. The morning sun climbed higher, burning off the last wisps of coastal fog. Somewhere in the distance, a drill instructor's voice carried on the wind, calling cadence for a formation that had no idea what was happening here. Officers stood beside enlisted, senior NCOs next to fresh boots. The entire spectrum of 1st Reconnaissance Battalion gathered because word had spread that something impossible was unfolding. In the center, standing at parade rest, Jordan Hayes looked smaller than ever, 5'5" against a crowd of warriors. But Master Gunnery Sergeant Kovac, standing in the front row, knew better. Size meant nothing. Capability meant everything. Jordan's voice, when she spoke, was flat, professional. The tone of someone delivering an after-action report, not confessing a hidden life. My name is Captain Jordan Elizabeth Hayes, United States Marine Corps, serial number 3761824, military occupational specialty 0372, critical skills operator. The murmurs started immediately. 0372 was MARSOC, Marine Special Operations Command, the kind of MOS that required years of training and selection processes that broke most candidates. I served 8 years active duty, 2 years infantry, 6 years with Marine Special Operations Regiment, 2nd Raider Battalion. Briggs' face drained of color. He'd failed MARSOC selection 3 times. The woman he'd spent the morning humiliating had served 6 years in the community he couldn't access. I completed 3 combat deployments: Iraq in 2016, Syria from 2018 to 2019, Afghanistan from 2021 to 2022. Jordan's breathing remained controlled, but her hands had begun to tremble slightly. She clasped them tighter behind her back. I was part of a 14 Marine MSOT conducting direct action raids against high-value targets in Kandahar province. Her voice wavered for the first time. On April 17, 2022, during an operation designated Copper Dagger, our team was ambushed during target extraction. The assembled Marines had gone completely silent. Even the wind seemed to quiet. 13 Marines died in that engagement. I was the only survivor. Jordan's eyes fixed on a point in the distance. Something no one else could. I received the Purple Heart for injuries sustained. I was also recommended for the Silver Star for actions during the engagement, though that recommendation was declined as part of the team's collective citation. She paused, forcing herself to continue. I was medically retired 8 months ago with full honorable discharge. Diagnosis: post-traumatic stress disorder, moderate to severe. Survivor's guilt, anxiety disorder. The VA and MARSOC Medical Board approved a graduated reintegration program as part of my treatment plan. Civilian employment on a military installation under psychiatric supervision. Therapeutic exposure to help process trauma. Jordan's voice steadied again, falling back into report delivery. I took this contractor position because I needed something quiet, something where nobody knew Captain Hayes, where nobody expected briefings or leadership or explanations of why I survived when 13 better Marines didn't, where I could just be nobody doing simple work while I figured out how to sleep through the night again. Complete silence. 217 people barely breathing. Colonel Mercer stepped forward, holding printed documentation she'd retrieved from her vehicle during the formation assembly. I've verified everything with MARSOC Personnel Command. Captain Hayes's complete record remains classified due to operational security, but I have authorization to confirm her service and awards. She read from the official summary, her voice carrying across the range. Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Medal with Valor Device. Purple Heart. Campaign medals for Iraq, Syria, and Afghanistan. Combat Action Ribbon. And a unit citation in lieu of individual Silver Star, awarded posthumously to Marine Special Operations Team 4-1 for actions on April 17, 2022. Mercer looked at the formation. The specifics of that operation remain classified at Special Access Program level. What I can tell you is that Captain Hayes's team prevented a catastrophic attack that would have resulted in significant American and Allied casualties. They paid for that success with their lives. Kovac's eyes were wet. He'd served 26 years, lost friends in Fallujah, understood the weight of survival. He called out in a voice thick with emotion, "Ma'am, request permission to render honors." Mercer nodded. Granted. Battalion, A-10, hut. 217 Marines snapped to attention with a sound like thunder. Kovac took 3 steps forward, came to attention himself, and saluted. Not the casual salute of daily military courtesy, but the slow, formal salute reserved for the most solemn occasions. The salute rendered at funerals and memorials. Thank you for your service, Captain. And thank you for carrying the memory of your team. Jordan's composure, held together through pure discipline, cracked. Her return salute was automatic, muscle memory from 8 years of service. But her hand shook, and tears tracked down her face for the first time that morning. She held the salute for the prescribed 3 seconds, then dropped her hand. D. I'm not a captain anymore, Master Gunnery Sergeant. I'm just Jordan. You'll always be a captain to us, ma'am. Kovac's voice was firm. Retirement doesn't erase what you did, what you sacrificed, what you lost. Jordan's breath hitched. She was 31 years old, medically retired, carrying ghosts that woke her every night at 3 in the morning. And she was finally, after 8 months of hiding, being seen for exactly who she was. I came here because I needed to remember what it felt like to be normal, she said quietly. To not have people look at me and see the operator who survived when her brothers and sisters didn't. I wake up at 0300 every night. I see their faces. I hear the explosions. I ask myself why I made it out when Staff Sergeant Miller didn't, when Corporal Rodriguez didn't, when Lieutenant Jackson didn't. Her voice grew rougher, the professional mask disintegrating completely. So I took this job, moving supplies, organizing inventory, scanning barcodes. Simple work that didn't require me to lead or fight or make decisions that got people killed. Because it was easy. Because nobody cared who I was. Because I could just exist without carrying the weight of being Captain Hayes. She turned to face Briggs directly. And then you decided I didn't belong here, that I was less than, that I needed to prove myself worthy of sharing space with real Marines. So I did. Briggs stared at the ground, unable to meet her eyes. His face had gone from pale to flushed with shame. Jordan addressed the entire formation now, her voice steadier. Every single person you meet is fighting battles you can't see, trauma you don't understand, losses that shaped them in ways they'll never fully explain. Maybe remember that before you judge someone for holding a mop instead of a rifle. The silence stretched for 10 seconds, 15, 20. Then Corporal Donnelly, standing near the back, spoke up. His voice cracked with emotion. Captain Hayes, ma'am, I'm sorry. We're all sorry. Other voices joined his. Marines murmuring agreements, apologies, acknowledgments. The sound built like a wave. Fletcher stepped forward from the front row, his 26-year-old face stricken. Ma'am, I was an asshole. There's no excuse. We didn't know, but that's not a defense. We should have treated you with respect regardless. Vance followed, his usual confidence gone. Captain, I was wrong. I participated in something shameful because I wanted to fit in with the senior officers. That was cowardice. Jordan looked at them both. You're learning a lesson the hard way, Marines. That's how the important ones stick. Mercer stepped forward again, her command voice cutting through the murmurs. Major Briggs, Lieutenant Fletcher, Staff Sergeant Vance. My office. 1 hour. The rest of you, dismissed. To normal duties stays on this range until I say otherwise. We have security protocols to file and paperwork to file. Clear? Yes, ma'am. The response thundered across the range. Dismissed. The formation broke apart slowly. Marines didn't immediately return to duties. Instead, they clustered in small groups, processing what they'd witnessed. Junior enlisted looked at their senior leaders differently now, understanding that rank and experience didn't always equal wisdom. Senior NCOs spoke quietly among themselves about humility and assumptions. Several young Marines, especially the handful of women in the battalion, approached Jordan tentatively. A female lance corporal, maybe 20 years old, spoke first. "Ma'am, can I ask you something?" Jordan nodded, exhausted but present. "How did you deal with being underestimated, with people assuming you couldn't do things because of how you looked?" Jordan studied the young woman's face, seeing the same determination and doubt she'd felt at that age. "I let my work speak louder than their doubts. I never argued with people about what I could do. I just did it. And eventually, the results became undeniable." Another Marine, male, maybe 23, asked, "What about after? After everything you accomplished? You still ended up here, hiding." Because accomplishment doesn't heal trauma, Jordan said quietly. Success in combat doesn't erase what combat costs. I achieved everything I set out to do in the Marines, made it through some of the hardest training in the military, led operations that mattered. But I also lost everyone who mattered most to me. So I had to figure out who I was after that. Turns out I'm still figuring it out. The young Marines nodded, absorbing wisdom that couldn't be taught in any classroom. Kovac approached as the crowd dispersed. "Captain, Colonel Mercer asked me to escort you to the battalion aid station. She wants the doc to check you over. Make sure this morning's stress didn't trigger any medical concerns." Jordan almost laughed. "Master Guns, I'm fine." "With respect, ma'am, that's not your call. You're under medical monitoring as part of your treatment program. This morning involved significant stress, weapons discharge, and public exposure of trauma. The doc needs to clear you." Jordan sighed but nodded. "Lead the way." As they walked across the base toward the medical building, Kovac spoke quietly. "For what it's worth, Captain, I'm glad it came out. Watching you hide who you were, watching them treat you like you were nothing, it was wrong. You deserve better." "I deserved privacy, Master Guns." "Maybe, but you also deserve respect, and now you'll get it." Jordan wasn't sure if that was true. Respect built on exposure felt different than respect earned through choice. But she was too tired to argue. In Colonel Mercer's office, Briggs stood at attention, his career hanging in the balance. Colonel Mercer's office smelled like coffee and old reports. 3 Marines stood at attention before her desk. Major Clifton Briggs, 38 years old and sweating through his uniform. Lieutenant Owen Fletcher, 26 and pale. Staff Sergeant Troy Vance, 29 and staring at a spot on the wall like it might save him. Mercer sat behind her desk, reading from a folder. The silence stretched for 2 full minutes before she spoke. "I've reviewed the witness statements. 47 Marines provided written accounts of this morning's events. Every single one corroborates the same story: systematic harassment of a civilian contractor based on gender bias and perceived status, escalating to public humiliation and unauthorized testing." She looked up. "That's not leadership. That's abuse of authority." Briggs opened his mouth. Mercer raised one finger, silencing him. "I've also spoken with the battalion executive officer and Sergeant Major Hendricks. We've consulted with Staff Judge Advocate regarding appropriate action. What happened this morning wasn't just unprofessional. It was harassment of a decorated combat veteran, conduct unbecoming of officers and non-commissioned officers, and abuse of rank for personal gratification." She stood, walking around the desk to face them directly. "Major Briggs, you initiated and led this harassment. You had multiple opportunities to stop, including direct warnings from Master Gunnery Sergeant Kovac. You ignored them because your ego was threatened by a woman who demonstrated competence you couldn't match." Briggs' jaw clenched, but he said nothing. "You're receiving a letter of reprimand for your official military personnel file. You're removed from the next promotion board cycle. You'll complete mandatory equal opportunity training and remedial professional military education on leadership ethics. And you're reassigned from company command to battalion logistics officer, effective immediately." The demotion wasn't in rank, but in prestige. From commanding Marines in the field to pushing papers. For an infantry officer like Briggs, it was professional humiliation. "Lieutenant Fletcher, you're young enough that this can be a learning experience instead of a career ender. Official counseling statement in your file. 30 days extra duty. You'll report to Captain Hayes's training cadre when it's established, and you'll learn what actual competence looks like." Fletcher nodded stiffly. "Yes, ma'am. Staff Sergeant Vance, you should have known better. You've deployed. You've seen real leadership under pressure. But you chose to participate in mockery to gain approval from officers who didn't deserve your respect." She paused. "Written reprimand. Suspended reduction in rank for 6 months. If you stay clean, it disappears. If you don't, you'll be a corporal again." "Understood, ma'am," Vance said quietly. Mercer returned to her desk. "You're all lucky Captain Hayes isn't pressing formal charges. She could file for harassment, hostile work environment, and violation of her medical accommodation plan. Any one of those would end your careers. She's choosing not to because, unlike you three, she understands that people can learn from their mistakes. Briggs finally spoke, his voice strained. "Ma'am, permission to speak? Granted. We genuinely didn't know who she was. If we'd known, that's exactly the problem, Major." Mercer's voice cut like a blade. "You didn't know, so you assumed. You saw a woman in civilian clothes doing manual labor and decided she was beneath you. That's the definition of prejudice. The fact that she turned out to be a decorated special operator doesn't make your behavior worse. Your behavior was already inexcusable. Her background just makes your ignorance more obvious." She dismissed them with a gesture. They saluted and filed out, each carrying the weight of consequences they'd earned. Alone in her office, Mercer pulled up Jordan Hayes's file on her secure terminal, the full record, accessed through MARSOC channels. She read citations for actions she'd never be allowed to discuss, saw after-action reports that painted a picture of a Marine who'd done extraordinary things under impossible circumstances. And then she read the medical evaluation from April 2022, the psychiatric assessment following Operation Copper Dagger, the recommendation for medical retirement that Jordan had initially fought before finally accepting 8 months ago. Mercer picked up her phone and dialed the base mental health clinic. "This is Colonel Mercer. I need to speak with Captain Hayes's attending psychiatrist. Yes, I'll hold." 2 hours later, Staff Sergeant Troy Vance found Jordan in the warehouse, reorganizing the same supplies she'd been working on when everything started. She worked with the same methodical precision, scanning barcodes, updating inventory, as if the morning's revelation hadn't happened. "Ma'am?" His voice was hesitant. Jordan looked up from her tablet. "Staff Sergeant, I owe you an apology, a real one, not in front of a formation." He took a breath. "I was trying to fit in with the senior officers. I was insecure about not making recon when I tried out 2 years ago, and I took that insecurity out on you because it was easier than facing my own failures." Jordan set down the tablet. "Staff Sergeant Vance, do you know why I didn't correct you this morning?" "No, ma'am." "Because I wanted to see if anyone would stand up without knowing my rank or background. If anyone had the moral courage to say that what was happening was wrong, regardless of who I was." She looked at him directly. "Corporal Donnelly tried. He's 21 years old, junior enlisted, and he tried to intervene, even though it could have cost him. You're 29. You've deployed 3 times. You have authority and experience, but you stayed silent." Vance's face showed the shame he felt. "You're right, ma'am. I failed that test." "Yes, you did. But you're here now, owning it. That counts for something." Jordan's voice softened slightly. "The Marines don't need perfect leaders, Staff Sergeant. We need leaders who can recognize when they're wrong and have the courage to change. You showed that courage by coming here." "Thank you, ma'am. For what it's worth, I'll do better." "I know you will." Dismissed. Vance saluted and left. Jordan returned to her inventory, but her hands shook slightly. Each apology, each recognition, each moment of being seen as Captain Hayes instead of just Jordan, it all accumulated like weight on her chest. Later that afternoon, Lieutenant Fletcher found her outside the warehouse, sitting on a loading dock during her break. The California sun was hot, the air dry. She was drinking water from a canteen and staring at nothing. "Ma'am, do you have a minute?" Jordan gestured to the empty space beside her. Fletcher sat, maintaining respectful distance. "I was an asshole this morning. There's no other word for it." His voice was young, uncertain. "I was insecure and I took it out on you. I haven't deployed yet, haven't proven myself, and I saw you doing work I considered beneath someone with military background, and I just assumed you couldn't hack it in uniform. I was completely wrong." Jordan didn't look at him, just kept staring at the empty parade deck across the street. "Lieutenant, you're 26. You haven't deployed yet, but you will. And when you do, you'll be responsible for Marines who have stories you don't know, trauma you can't see, battles they're fighting inside their own heads. Your job isn't to judge them, it's to bring out their best. How do I do that, ma'am? Start by asking instead of assuming. Start by treating every Marine with the respect you'd want if you were carrying invisible weight. Start by understanding that rank and experience don't tell you who someone really is or what they've survived." Fletcher nodded, processing. "Will you accept my apology?" "Yes, but apologizing is the easy part. Changing your behavior is what matters." "I understand, ma'am." He left. Jordan sat alone on the loading dock for another 10 minutes before returning to work. The hardest apology came at 1600 hours. Major Briggs requested to meet with Jordan in Colonel Mercer's office, with Mercer present as witness. Jordan agreed reluctantly. Briggs stood across the desk from her, looking 10 years older than he had that morning. His career had been redirected, his reputation damaged, his ego shattered. "Captain Hayes, I owe you an apology." His voice was formal, controlled. "My behavior this morning was inexcusable. I let my own insecurities about never making special operations turn into resentment toward you. I saw someone I perceived as weak, and I targeted you because it made me feel superior. That was cowardice, not leadership." Jordan studied his face, looking for sincerity beneath the humiliation. She found it, mixed with anger and shame. "Major, I accept your apology, but I want you to understand something." She stood, bringing herself to her full 5'5" height. "I didn't judge you for failing MARSOC selection. Most people who try don't make it. There's no shame in that. If you'd approached me respectfully, asked for advice or training tips, I would have helped you. Most operators will. We want good people in the community." Briggs looked surprised. "You would have trained me? If you'd asked with humility instead of approaching with arrogance, yes. But you let pride poison you. You let failure turn into bitterness. And that bitterness made you cruel to someone who'd done nothing to you except exist in a space you thought you owned." She paused, making sure he heard every word. "Don't let this happen again. Don't let insecurity turn you into someone who tears others down. You're better than that." "Han, what you showed this morning. Prove it." Briggs nodded slowly. "I will, ma'am. Thank you for giving me the chance." After he left, Mercer turned to Jordan. "You handled that with more grace than he deserved." "He's not a bad Marine, ma'am, just a broken one. I know what that looks like. Speaking of which, I spoke with your psychiatrist. Dr. Chen says this morning's events could constitute a significant setback in your treatment. She wants to see you tomorrow for emergency evaluation." Jordan's shoulders sagged. "I'm fine." "You're not fine. You just had your carefully constructed privacy destroyed. You were forced to relive your team's death in front of 200 witnesses. You're experiencing what Dr. Chen calls re-traumatization." Mercer's voice was firm but kind. "You'll see her tomorrow. That's not optional." "Yes, ma'am." "But there's something else." Mercer pulled out another document. "The battalion is starting pre-deployment training for Alpha Company in 2 weeks. They need a CQB instructor with operational experience. I'm offering you the position. Contract work, proper compensation, official instructor status." Jordan stared at her. "Ma'am, I came here to be invisible." "That ship sailed this morning, but you can choose what comes next. You can keep hiding in the warehouse, pretending you're not one of the most qualified combat instructors on this base. Or you can use your experience to prepare Marines for what they're going to face downrange. You can help them survive what your team didn't." The words hit Jordan like a physical blow. Help them survive what your team didn't. She was quiet for a long moment. "Can I think about it?" "You have 48 hours. After that, I'm offering it to someone less qualified." Jordan left the office as the sun began to set. The base was quieter now, Most Marines finished with duty day, heading to barracks or base housing. She walked to the warehouse where her truck was parked, sat in the driver's seat without starting the engine, pulled out her phone and scrolled to a photo she kept hidden in a locked folder. 14 Marines in full combat kit, desert background, weapons ready, faces smiling despite the danger they face daily. Her team, her family. Staff Sergeant Davis, Corporal Miller, Lieutenant Jackson, Sergeant Rodriguez. 13 names she whispered every morning at 0300 when the nightmares woke her. "I don't know if I can do this," she whispered to their frozen faces. "I don't know if I can teach people to do what got you killed." They didn't answer. They never did. But somewhere in her mind, she heard Davis's voice from 2 years ago. "If we don't make it, Hayes, you make sure the next generation learns from our mistakes." Jordan closed her eyes, tears streaming down her face. The aftermath of revelation is never clean. Not in the movies, not in real life. Certainly not on a Marine Corps base where a field-grade officer just publicly humiliated a decorated combat veteran. At 800 hours the next morning, Jordan Hayes sat in Dr. Ellen Chen's office at the base mental health clinic, staring at a poster about breathing techniques she'd memorized months ago. Dr. Chen was 42, civilian contractor, specializing in combat trauma. She'd worked with special operations personnel for 15 years and had heard stories that would break most people. But she'd never had a patient's cover blown quite like this. "Walk me through yesterday morning," Dr. Chen said, pen poised over her notepad. "Start with the warehouse." Jordan described the events with clinical detachment, the harassment, the escalation, the forced demonstration, the public revelation. Her voice remained steady, factual, like she was briefing a mission instead of describing her own humiliation. "How did you feel when Major Briggs first knocked over your clipboard?" "Nothing. It was expected behavior from someone insecure about their own competence." "And when the crowd started filming?" "Aware, calculating exit strategies, assessing threat levels." Dr. Chen made notes. "You shifted into tactical assessment mode. That's a common trauma response." "When did you start feeling emotional impact?" Jordan was quiet for a moment. "When Master Gunnery Sergeant Kovac saluted me. When he thanked me for carrying my team's memory. That's when I couldn't maintain distance anymore. Because he saw you as Captain Hayes, not just Jordan the contractor. Because he reminded me that I'll always be Captain Hayes, even when I don't want to be." They talked for 90 minutes. Dr. Chen prescribed increased therapy sessions, continuation of her current medications, and mandatory stress management protocols. But she also said something Jordan hadn't expected. "You've been trying to bury Captain Hayes for 8 months. Yesterday proved you can't. She's part of who you are, trauma and all. Maybe instead of hiding her, you need to integrate her. Find a way to be both Jordan and Captain Hayes, not one or the other." Jordan left the appointment with a prescription refill and a lot to think about. At 1400 hours, the entire battalion assembled for a formal gathering in the base theater. Colonel Mercer stood at the podium, her presence commanding immediate silence from the 300 Marines packed into the seats. Yesterday, this battalion learned a hard lesson about assumptions and respect. Some of you participated in or witnessed the harassment of Captain Jordan Hayes. Some of you stood by and did nothing. A few of you tried to intervene. Today, we address what that means going forward. Mercer clicked a remote. A presentation appeared on the screen behind her. Title: Leadership, Respect, and the Cost of Assumptions. Captain Hayes is a decorated combat veteran who served 6 years in Marine Special Operations Command. She lost her entire team in action. She came to this base seeking quiet recovery as part of her PTSD treatment plan. Instead, she was mocked, harassed, and forced to expose trauma she wasn't ready to share. The theater was silent except for the hum of the air conditioning. That failure is on all of us, on the leaders who participated, on the Marines who watched and did nothing, on the culture that made her feel unsafe. Safe being honest about who she was. Mercer's voice hardened. That changes now. She outlined new protocols, mandatory equal opportunity training for all hands, anonymous reporting systems for harassment, leadership accountability measures. But then she said something that made Jordan, sitting in the back row, sit up straighter. Captain Hayes has agreed to serve as a consultant instructor for our pre-deployment training cycle. She'll be teaching close quarters battle, tactical marksmanship, and combat mindset to Alpha Company. She'll be doing this despite having every reason to never want to work with us again. That's what real leadership looks like, taking your pain and using it to make others better. Applause started slowly, then built. 300 Marines showing respect the right way this time. After the formation, young Marines approached Jordan carefully, respectfully. A female lance corporal named Williams, 20 years old with wide eyes, asked if she could speak privately. They walked to a quiet corner of the parade deck. "Ma'am, I'm trying out for Marine Recon next year. Everyone tells me I won't make it because I'm too small, too weak, not aggressive enough." Williams looked at the ground. "Seeing what you did yesterday, knowing what you accomplished, it makes me think maybe I can prove them wrong too." Jordan studied the young woman's face, seeing herself 10 years ago. Same determination, same doubt, same fire that refused to go out no matter how many people tried to extinguish it. Lance Corporal, the people who tell you that you can't are usually the ones who couldn't do it themselves. They project their limitations onto you because your potential threatens their excuses. Jordan's voice was firm. Don't argue with them. Don't waste energy proving them wrong with words. Just do the work. Show up every day. Get stronger, get faster, get smarter. And when selection comes, let your performance speak louder than their doubts ever could. Williams nodded, tears in her eyes. "Thank you, ma'am." 3 more junior Marines approached with similar questions, similar doubts, similar hope that maybe they could be more than people assumed. Jordan spent an hour talking with them, sharing lessons learned through years of being underestimated. When they finally dispersed, she felt exhausted, but also something else. Something she hadn't felt in 8 months. Useful. That evening, Jordan returned to the warehouse to collect her personal items from her locker. She found Corporal Donnelly waiting near the entrance, shifting his weight nervously. "Ma'am, I wanted to apologize properly. I tried to speak up yesterday, but I didn't push hard enough. I let rank intimidate me when I should have been louder." Jordan considered him. 21 years old, idealistic, still believed the Marine Corps worked the way the recruiting posters promised. "Corporal, you were the only person who tried to intervene before my identity was revealed. That took more courage than you know. Most people, even senior Marines, stayed silent because it was easier. You didn't." She paused. "That's the kind of moral courage we need more of." Donnelly looked relieved. "Thank you, ma'am. Is there anything I can do to help with the training program?" Jordan studied him thoughtfully. "You have your deployment coming up, right?" "Yes, ma'am, in 6 months with Alpha Company." "Then yes, there's something you can do. Colonel Mercer is assigning you as assistant instructor for the training cadre. You'll help me run the CQB course. You'll learn everything I can teach you in the time we have, and then you'll take that knowledge downrange and bring your Marines home alive." Donnelly's eyes widened. "Ma'am, I'm just a corporal. I don't have the experience to—" "You have the character. That's more important. Experience comes with time. Integrity either exists or it doesn't. You showed yours yesterday." Jordan's voice was firm. "Report to the Combat Training Center tomorrow at 0600. Bring knee pads and a learning attitude." "Aye, ma'am." As Donnelly left, practically floating with pride and purpose, Kovac appeared from the warehouse interior. "Overheard that. You're giving him a real opportunity. He earned it. Most people twice his age didn't have his courage yesterday." Kovac nodded. "For what it's worth, Captain, I think you made the right choice, taking the instructor position. These Marines need what you can teach them." "Do they? Or am I just trying to replay the past with a different ending?" "Maybe both. Maybe that's okay." Kovac's weathered face showed understanding earned through decades of service. My team in Fallujah, second battle, we lost 8 Marines in 1 week. I carried that for years, still do. But I used it, trained the next generation better, made sure they knew what we'd learned through blood. Some of them are still alive because of that. Your team paid a terrible price for the lessons they learned. Honor them by making sure the next generation doesn't have to learn the same lessons the same way. Jordan felt tears threatening again. She forced them back. Master Guns, how do you live with it? The survival guilt? Honestly, I don't think you ever fully do. It gets quieter over time, but it never disappears. He looked at her directly. But I learned that surviving isn't something to apologize for. It's something to use. You're still here for a reason, Captain. Maybe this is part of it. After Kovac left, Jordan sat alone in the empty warehouse. She pulled out her phone and opened the photo of her team again. 14 faces frozen in time. Okay, she whispered to them. I'll try. I'll teach them everything you taught me. I'll make sure they're ready. But I need you to know, this doesn't mean I've forgiven myself. It just means I'm trying to make your deaths mean something. The next morning, at 0600, Jordan stood in the Combat Training Center wearing proper instructor credentials for the first time in 8 months. Donnelly arrived early, nervous and eager. Then came the students. 40 Marines from Alpha Company, ages ranging from 19 to 32, all scheduled to deploy to the Middle East in 6 months. Major Briggs entered last. He'd been reassigned, signed from company command, but was still required to complete pre-deployment training. He stood in the back, no longer strutting with false confidence, just another student. Jordan addressed the formation with the same voice she'd used to brief operations in 3 different countries. My name is Captain Jordan Hayes. I'm a retired critical skills operator from MARSOC 2nd Raider Battalion. I've conducted 23 direct action raids, 15 sensitive site exploitations, and 7 high-value target captures across 3 combat zones. I'm not here to impress you with my resume. I'm here because 13 Marines I served with didn't make it home, and I'll be damned if I let you go downrange unprepared for what you'll face. She let that sink in. This isn't basic combat training. This is reality preparation. I'm going to teach you how to clear rooms without getting shot, how to move through urban terrain like you belong there, how to make split-second decisions that keep your team alive. Some of this will be uncomfortable. All of it will be necessary. Questions? Good. We start with the fundamentals. Donnelly, front and center. You're my demonstration partner. For the next 3 hours, Jordan ran them through basic CQB techniques with a precision that left even experienced Marines taking notes. She didn't just show them movements, she explained the why behind every tactic, the geometry of angles, the psychology of room clearing, the communication that kept teams synchronized. Briggs watched from the back, humbled and learning. Fletcher performed the drills with newfound focus. Vance asked smart questions and worked harder than anyone. During a water break, a young private approached Jordan hesitantly. "Ma'am, is it true you were the only survivor of your team?" Jordan could have deflected, could have maintained professional distance. But these Marines were going into combat. They deserved honesty. Yes, April 17th, 2022. Ambush during target extraction. 13 KI. I was medevaced out. How do you deal with that, ma'am? Imperfectly. I have PTSD. I have nightmares. I have days where getting out of bed takes everything I have. But I deal with it by doing what I'm doing now, using what they taught me to prepare you. Making their sacrifice means something. She looked at him directly. You'll face hard things downrange, things that change you. The question isn't whether you'll be affected. It's whether you'll let those experiences destroy you or define you. Choose definition. The private nodded slowly, understanding something profound had just been shared. Training continued for 6 hours that day. When Jordan finally dismissed them, every Marine was exhausted but also energized. They'd learned from someone who'd actually done it, survived it, and was willing to share the real lessons. As the students filed out, Colonel Mercer appeared at the training center entrance. How'd it go? Better than expected. They're motivated. They're teachable. They'll be ready. And you? How are you? Jordan considered the question honestly. Still broken. But maybe that's something. Mercer nodded. That's more than something, Captain. That's everything. 3 weeks after the incident, Camp Pendleton's Combat Training Center looked different. Not physically. Same ranges, same obstacles, same California sun beating down on concrete and sand. But the atmosphere had changed. In Breaching Room 3, 40 Marines sat in silence, watching a 5'5" woman in faded BDU pants and a black t-shirt demonstrate rune clearing with a precision that made veteran instructors take notes. This was the new normal, and everyone was better for it. Jordan moved through the mock structure with Donnelly as her partner, their movements synchronized and efficient. She paused at the fatal funnel, the doorway where most casualties occurred in close-quarters combat. This is where people die. Right here. Because they rush, because they panic, because they forget that speed without precision is just suicide with extra steps. She positioned herself at the proper angle. You move deliberately. You clear your sectors, you communicate constantly. Donnelly, on me. They flowed through the door, each taking predetermined sectors, weapons up, voices calling clear as they dominated the space. Textbook execution. Jordan reset and addressed the watching Marines. This isn't Hollywood. This is economy of motion. Every step has purpose. Wasted movement gets you killed or gets your teammate killed. Lieutenant Fletcher, you're up. Show me what you've learned. Fletcher moved to the start position. 3 weeks ago, he'd been mocking her. Now he practiced the techniques she taught with almost religious dedication. He performed the entry, movements careful but effective. Jordan watched critically. Better. Your muzzle discipline is improving, but you're still telegraphing your movement. Your shoulders shift before you commit. Fix that, or someone watching from inside will shoot you before you clear the threshold. Run it again. He ran it again. Slower this time, more controlled. Improved. That's how you learn, Marines. Slow is smooth. Smooth is fast. Master the fundamentals at quarter speed before you try to be a tactical superhero at full speed. She gestured to the next student. Staff Sergeant Vance, your turn. Vance had transformed over 3 weeks. The arrogance was gone, replaced by genuine humility and work ethic. He approached training like someone who understood he'd been given a second chance. His room entry was solid, professional. Jordan nodded approval. Good. Your footwork is clean. Communication is clear. That's the standard, Marines. That's what keeps you alive. Training continued through the morning. Jordan rotated students through drills, correcting mistakes, reinforcing good habits, sharing lessons learned through experience that couldn't be taught from a manual. During a break, several junior Marines gathered around her with questions about deployment. A lance corporal named Torres, 19 years old and nervous about his first combat tour, asked what scared her most during operations. Jordan considered the question carefully. Not dying. That's quick, relatively speaking. What scared me was making a mistake that got someone else killed. Every decision you make downrange affects your team. That weight, that responsibility, it's heavier than any gear you'll carry. How do you handle that pressure, ma'am? Training. You train until the fundamentals are automatic, until you can perform under stress without thinking. Because when things go sideways, and they will, you won't rise to the occasion. You'll default to your training. So make your training count. Another Marine asked about fear management. Jordan's answer was brutally honest. You don't eliminate fear. You acknowledge it and operate anyway. Fear is your body telling you the stakes are real. Listen to it, but don't let it control you. Use it to stay sharp, not to freeze. Major Briggs sat on the edge of the group, listening. Over 3 weeks, his attitude had changed completely. The arrogance was gone, burned away by the humiliation of being publicly wrong and the harder lesson of being genuinely outclassed. He now approached Jordan's training with the humility of someone who finally understood how much he didn't know. At lunch, Briggs approached Jordan as she reviewed training notes. "Ma'am, request permission to ask a question." "Granted." "Why are you helping me? After what I did, you'd be justified in refusing to train me or pushing me out of the program." Jordan looked at him directly. "Because Alpha Company deploys in 5 months. You're going with them. Your Marines deserve you at your best, not broken by ego and insecurity. What you did was wrong, but you're trying to be better. That's enough for me." Briggs nodded slowly. "Thank you, ma'am. For the record, I'm learning more from you in 3 weeks than I learned in a year at officer courses. That's because I'm teaching you what works, not what looks good in PowerPoint briefings." That afternoon, Colonel Mercer visited the training center to observe. She watched Jordan run live-fire CQB drills with real ammunition and stress inoculation. Marines moved through structures with blanks firing, role players acting as hostile forces, smoke and noise creating realistic chaos. Jordan's voice cut through the confusion, directing, correcting, coaching. When a team made a critical error that would have resulted in friendly fire, she stopped the drill immediately. "Freeze. Everyone stop moving." She walked to the team leader. "Corporal Hayes, what just happened?" The corporal, 22 years old and shaking with adrenaline, struggled to answer. "Ma'am, I lost track of my team's positions. And I almost shot Private Chen when he crossed my sector." "Correct. In a real environment, Chen is dead or wounded from your negligence. This is why communication is non-negotiable. This is why you maintain 360-degree awareness. This is why you slow down when you're uncertain." Jordan's voice was firm but not cruel. "Learn from this mistake here, where the consequence is embarrassment, not downrange, where the consequence is a flag-draped coffin." The lesson landed hard. Every Marine. Jordan understood the stakes had just become real. After training secured for the day, Mercer pulled Jordan aside. "You're a natural instructor. These Marines respect you in a way I rarely see." "They respect the lessons, ma'am, not necessarily me." "Don't sell yourself short. You're giving them something most instructors can't. Real experience combined with genuine investment in their survival. That's rare." Mercer paused. "I want to extend your contract. Full instructor billet, permanent staff position if you want it." Jordan was quiet for a moment. "Ma'am, I'm still figuring out who I am post-retirement. I don't know if permanent is something I can commit to." "Fair enough, but the offer stands. Think about it." That evening, Jordan sat in her base housing unit, staring at paperwork from the VA about her disability benefits and treatment plan. Her phone showed 21:47 hours. In a few hours, she'd wake up at 0300 with the nightmares that never fully went away. But something had changed. The nightmares were less frequent now. 3 weeks ago, they came every night. Now, maybe 4 times a week. Still devastating when they hit, but not constant. Her therapist said it was because she'd found purpose again. That teaching gave her a way to honor her team that sitting alone in the dark never could. Her phone buzzed. Text from Donnelly. "Ma'am, can't sleep. Thinking about the training. Coffee?" Jordan smiled slightly. The kid reminded her of herself at his age. Overeager, overthinking, committed to being perfect. She texted back. "Range 5, sunrise. Bring your rifle. Let's work on your weak side shooting." "Roger that, ma'am. Thank you." Jordan set her phone down and looked at the team photo on her nightstand. 14 Marines who'd never see another sunrise. Staff Sergeant Davis grinned at the camera, always the joker. Corporal Miller looked serious, the quiet professional. Lieutenant Jackson had his arm around Rodriguez, both laughing at something off camera. "I'm trying," Jordan whispered to them. "I'm teaching them everything you taught me. I'm making sure they're ready. I'm using what we learned together to give them a better chance than we had." The photo didn't respond. It never did. But for the first time in 8 months, Jordan felt like she was doing something that mattered beyond just surviving. At 03:15, she woke from a nightmare. The usual one. The ambush, the explosions, the screaming. 13 voices calling for help she couldn't provide. But this time, instead of lying in the dark, drowning in guilt, she got up, put on PT gear, went for a run on the empty base roads. The California night was cool, stars bright above the distant mountains. Her feet hit pavement in steady rhythm. 4-count breathing synchronized with her stride. 1 foot in front of the other. Keep moving, keep living, keep teaching. By the time the sun rose, she'd run 6 miles and met Donnelly at range 5 as promised. The corporal was already there, rifle cleaned and ready, eager to learn. "Good morning, ma'am. Thanks for doing this." "Thank you for caring enough to ask." Jordan set up targets.
Weak side shooting is critical because threats don't always come from convenient angles. You need to be as competent with your support side as your dominant side. Let's see your current capability. They worked for 2 hours as the base came alive around them. Other Marines saw them training, and some joined in. By 0700, 10 Marines were on the range getting extra instruction because Jordan was there and available. Word continued to spread. The contractor who'd been mocked was now the most sought-after instructor on base. Marines requested her by name for additional training. Officers asked her to evaluate their unit's capabilities. Even the battalion sergeant major stopped by to watch her teach and left impressed. At 1100 hours, Jordan stood in front of Alpha Company for their final pre-deployment brief. 40 Marines who'd spent 3 weeks learning everything she could teach them. You deploy in 4 months. Between now and then, you'll do more training, more drills, more preparation. But I want you to remember something. Jordan's voice was steady, carrying the weight of experience. The most important weapon you carry isn't your rifle. It's your judgment, your ability to make good decisions under pressure, your commitment to bringing your teammates home. She paused, making eye contact with Marines across the formation. I lost 13 Marines because we encountered a situation our training hadn't fully prepared us for. We adapted, we fought, we did everything right, and it still wasn't enough. That's the reality of combat. You can be perfect and still lose people. But your job is to be as prepared as possible so that when the unpredictable happens, you have the skills and judgment to adapt. The Marines listened with absolute focus. Every person in this formation matters, not just to the Marine Corps, not just to your families, but to each other. You're not just a company. You're a family that's about to face the hardest test of your lives. Take care of each other, trust your training, make smart decisions, and come home. After the brief, Lance Corporal Williams approached Jordan privately. "Ma'am, I'm putting in my package for recon selection next month because of what you showed me about not listening to people who say I can't." Jordan felt something warm in her chest. Pride, maybe? Or hope? Good. Work hard. Trust yourself. Let me know if you need a recommendation letter. You do that, ma'am? Absolutely. I believe you can make it. Now go prove me right. As the sun set on another day, Jordan returned to the warehouse where everything had started 3 weeks ago. The place where she'd been humiliated, where her carefully constructed anonymity had been destroyed, where she'd been forced to become Captain Hayes again. Master Gunnery Sergeant Kovac found her there, standing in the same spot where Briggs had kicked over her clipboard. "Thinking about how different things are now?" he asked. "Thinking about whether I'm doing this for the right reasons. Am I teaching because it helps them, or because it helps me feel less guilty about—"
Does it have to be one or the other? Kovac leaned against a supply rack. Maybe you're teaching because you're good at it and they need it, and it gives your survival purpose. All 3 can be true. Jordan considered that. "Master Guns, do the nightmares ever stop?" No, but they change. They go from destroying you to reminding you. Reminding you why the work matters, why staying in the fight matters, even when the fight looks different than it used to. Is this my fight now? Training instead of operating? Maybe. Or maybe it's just the current phase of a longer fight. You're 31, Captain. You've got a lot of years left to figure out who Jordan Hayes becomes after the war. They stood in comfortable silence, 2 warriors at different stages of the same journey. Jordan's phone buzzed. Text from Colonel Mercer. Decision on permanent instructor position? Need answer by Friday. Jordan looked around the warehouse. 3 weeks ago, this place represented her attempt to disappear. Now it represented where everything changed, where she'd been forced to stop running from Captain Hayes and start integrating her. She texted back, "I'll take it. 1-year contract, renewable if it's working." Mercer responded immediately. "Outstanding. Welcome to the team. Official paperwork Monday." Jordan pocketed her phone and looked at Kovac. "I just committed to staying." "Good. These Marines need you, and I think you need them too." As Jordan drove off base that evening, passing Marines saluted her with genuine respect. Not because they had to, because they wanted to. Because she'd earned it, through competence, humility, and genuine care for their survival. She pulled into her small apartment off base, exhausted but satisfied. The team photo sat on her dashboard. She picked it up, studying their faces in the fading light. "I'm still here," she told them. "Still fighting. Just differently now. I hope that's enough. I hope I'm making you proud." The photo offered no answers, but Jordan didn't need them anymore. She was learning to live with uncertainty, learning to accept that survival wasn't something to apologize for, but something to use. She'd teach, she'd train, she'd give the next generation every advantage her team's sacrifice had bought. And maybe, in time, she'd learn that Captain Jordan Hayes didn't die in Kandahar. She just transformed into someone new. Someone who carried the weight of 13 ghosts, but used that weight to lift others higher. That was enough. For now, it was enough. If this story meant something to you, remember, every person you meet is fighting battles you can't see. Respect isn't given for uniforms or titles. It's earned through character, humility, and how you treat people when you think it doesn't matter. Jordan Hayes learned that lesson the hard way. So did the Marines who underestimated her. But they all became better for it. Subscribe for more stories about the warriors among us who prove that strength comes in unexpected forms. And remember, never judge someone for holding a mop when you don't know what weapons they've mastered. Semper Fi.